Let's all get settled down, inshallah. إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له ونشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له ونشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون. All praise is due to Allah. We worship Him, we seek refuge in Allah, and we seek His forgiveness. And whomever Allah guides, no one can misguide. And whomever Allah misguides, no one can guide. O you who believe, fear Allah as He should be feared, and do not die only except in a state of Iman. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والحمد لله وكفى وسلام على عباده الذين اصطفى خصوصا على سيدنا ورسوله وخاتم الأنبياء وعلى آله الأزكياء وأصحابه الأتقياء أما بعد. اللهم إنا نسألك حبك وحب من يحبك وحب عمل يقربنا إلى حبك يا رب العالمين. Welcome back everybody to another Wednesday night. Alhamdulillah, glad to be back here. Happy to see you guys, all the frequent faces coming back. Alhamdulillah, barakallahu fikum. Let's get right into it. What did we, who can give me a point that we talked about last week, inshallah, in last week's lecture?
The dangers of backbiting and talking behind people.
Amazing. The dangers of backbiting and talking behind people's backs. We hit heavy on this, and quite frankly, للأسف, it's sad for me to say that there's still people in the community after that lecture continue to speak about other people. So it's rumors, it's inevitable. May Allah guide us all. And if you're one of those people, and if the shoe fits, you're just gonna have to reflect a little bit more on that. What else did we talk about?
Types of clothes people get on the day of judgment.
Yes, the types of clothing that some of us will be wearing on the Day of Judgment. Specifically, I mentioned more so of those who are believers and the types of clothes they will be wearing on the Day of Judgment. So thank you guys for sharing those 2 points. We also briefly spoke about, how the Quran can be, mashallah, we have Brother Yaqub, who's now a Hafid, mashallah, Allahumma barik. So he led our salah. He just completed his hifd, mashallah. How old are you, Yaqub?
Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar. Takbir. Allahu Akbar.
Mashallah, it's an amazing thing. And inshallah, you're one of those people in Jannah, or on the Day of Judgment, where Allah clothes you with the clothes of Quran, and allows your parents to wear crowns and also be clothed with that. Ameen. Now we also talked about the differences of those people who spend wearing lavish clothes in this dunya, specifically men who wear silk, which is known to be that is something that is haram. So for those who are wearing silk, what that's going to be like on the Day of Judgment also. And those Muslims who don't cover their awras and those who do cover their awras, what it's going to be like and what they're going to be clothed with on the Day of Judgment. Now, I know we kind of dove deep and heavy on punishments last week, and mainly the punishments of the backbiting and things like that. And this week I wanted to talk about the opposite, the contrary. We all know on the Day of Judgment, what's a characteristic of the Day of Judgment? Who can, mainly in terms of temperature and light. What will the Day of Judgment be like?
Very, very dark.
Very, very dark and very, very hot. So these are the 2 things of the Day of Judgment that are big characteristics. It'll be very, very dark on the Day of Judgment. And it'll be very, very hot on the Day of Judgment. Now, will there be any shade on the Day of Judgment for anybody? Yes and no. Why yes? Sisters, can we quiet down, please? Go ahead. So we mentioned, it's very similar to what he talked about, great answer, mashallah, is that we mentioned that there will be people who will be shaded on the Day of Judgment based on their Quran memorization, based on the zakat they give, based on their good deeds. And every single person will be shaded on the Day of Judgment based on what they do. Now, Also, in terms of the heat, we talked about the sweat and the people who will be drowning in their own sweat. Now, I know I hit these topics last week very, very quickly at the end of the lecture. I remember it was like 2-3 minutes before Iqamah. We talked about the person who's arrogant, who remembers what will be. If he's arrogant in this world, what will happen to him on the Day of Judgment? He will be like what?
Very small.
Very small, like the size of an ant, right? On the Day of Judgment. Because here he had a big ego on this dunya, and in the akhirah, he will be very small. That ego won't mean anything. It doesn't matter. Now, what about the one who conceals knowledge? The one who conceals knowledge, what will happen to him on the Day of Judgment? Meaning a person has a lot of knowledge about the deen, but he doesn't spread it with other people. He doesn't share it. What will happen with this person? He will be brittled with the rains of fire on the Day of Resurrection. And then the person who's a ruler, and this ruler was in charge of the Muslims, but yet there were Muslims who were poor. There were Muslims who didn't have enough food to eat. There were Muslims who didn't have medical care. What's the responsibility? What will happen to this person on the Day of Judgment? He didn't pay attention to the needs of the Muslims in this dunya. What will happen to him on the Day of Judgment?
Allah will ignore it, right?
Allah won't pay attention to him. If you don't pay attention to the people of the Muslims in dunya, Allah won't pay attention to you in the akhirah. Na'am. And the last one is, we mentioned, who can name it? The one who lies about their dreams. The one who lies about their dreams. And it's narrated by Ibn Abbas in Bukhari. The person, whoever speaks of a dream and he did not see it, will be told to tie 2 grains of barley together. And he will never be able to do it. He will never be able to do it. And whoever eavesdrops on people's conversations, there will be molten lead poured into his ears. May Allah protect us from these punishments.
And we also discussed like whoever doesn't take his zakat on the day.
Naam, the snake. Yes, we did talk about that as well. Jazakallah khair, Ali. I just real quick, I want to mention, we need to be starting these lectures a little bit earlier, so please be here on time. It's very distracting when people are showing up late. We should be here praying Maghrib on time, okay? Whether you're just 10 minutes after Adhan, but try not to delay it after that. So please, be here on time. I know it's distracting for the people who are praying right now for me to be talking, and they're trying to pray Salah. So it would be a lot easier if everybody's here on time. That way everybody can also leave on time, because we know some of you guys have work and school and things like that coming up the next day. Now, usually as Muslims, or not as Muslims, but as people we're divided in 3 groups, okay? Who can just give me an idea of what one of these groups would be? As general people, not Muslims alone, but general people. What would these 3 groups be?
People of right.
People that are righteous, okay? And the contrary of that is what? People who aren't. Kafirin. So righteous, kafirin, and what's the last one? No. It relates with righteousness. More righteous. Exactly. They're people who are muhsineen, ihsan. They excel. Wait, Ali, please, be patient with me. Okay? There's three categories. Righteous, not righteous, and those who excel in their righteousness. Okay? I want to say the majority of us fall in the group of righteous, alhamdulillah. But we all want to reach that level of ihsan. We all want to reach that level of just being top tier. Now, as ihsan, we know there's a state of iman. There's a state of Islam, iman, and then ihsan. Islam is the basics. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah. We're good. Iman is doing what? What are the pillars of iman? What are they? Na'am, believing, that's iman, you're at that level. Now ihsan is, we mentioned this a lot in Ramadan. What's ihsan?
Worshipping Allah like you are seeing Him.
Worshipping Allah as if He's standing in front of you, right? As if you see Him. But the thing is, do we see Allah? We don't see Him, right? So you continue to worship and understand that He's seeing you and He's watching you. And that's the highest level a Muslim can reach, is ihsan. Praying to Allah and worshiping to Allah as if you see Him in front of you, right? And we made this connection in Ramadan, right? When somebody comes into the masjid and the shaykh is sitting there, and you're like immediately, you usually don't pray your 2 rak'ahs of sunnah, but immediately all of a sudden you're praying it because Shaykh Shams is standing right there. He's watching you, right? So now you're praying. So you're worshiping Allah as if Allah is watching you, but you know He's not. As if you're standing in front of Him, but you're not. You don't see Allah, but He sees you, right? Now, when we spoke about the resurrection, how fast will people go to the land of gathering? How fast will people get there? Varying speeds. Now, okay, some people will be walking, some people will be running, some people will be jogging, and some people will be doing what? Perfect, amazing, great answer. Walking on their faces. مُكِبًّا عَلَى وَجْهِهِ. He will be walking on his face, right? And some people will be riding riding an animal or something. They will be reaching there faster than anybody else, right? Now, we're diced up into 3 groups, and the Quran tells us. The Quran tells us these 3 groups that we are divided in. So 3 groups. وَكُنْتُمْ أَزْوَاجًا ثَلَاثًا. You guys are 3 groups, divided into 3 groups. فَأَصْحَابُ الْيَمِينِ مَا أَصْحَابُ الْيَمِينِ. The group of the righteousness. Verily they're the righteous ones. وَأَصْحَابُ what? What is it? Exactly. وَأَصْحَابُ الْمَشْأَمَةِ مَا أَصْحَابُ الْمَشْأَمَةِ. The people of the far left. Miserable. 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 وَالسَّابِقُونَ السَّابِقُونَ. Those who will beat you, the forerunners. سَابِقُون. A race, right? The word سَابِقُون comes from the word sabaqa. You pass somebody. And we say it in Arabic as sibaq, right? You pass, you race. These people will be flying past you. Why? Because in this dunya, سَابِقُونَ إِلَىٰ طَاعَةِ اللَّهِ فِي الدُّنْيَا. They are forerunners to worshiping Allah in this dunya. سَابِقُونَ فِي طَاعَةِ اللَّهِ سَابِقُونَ إِلَىٰ طَاعَةِ اللَّهِ فِي الدُّنْيَا سَابِقُونَ إِلَىٰ رِضْوَانِ يَوْمِ الْقِيَامَةِ. And they are the forerunners for His pleasure. إِلَىٰ رِضْوَانِهِ يَوْمِ الْقِيَامَةِ. They run to the pleasure of Allah on the day of judgment. Why? Because in this dunya, right? وَالسَّابِقُونَ السَّابِقُونَ. Those سَابِقُون سَابِقُونَ إِلَىٰ طَاعَةِ اللَّهِ فِي الدُّنْيَا. They're running to worship Allah in this dunya, right? وَسَابِقُونَ إِلَىٰ رِضْوَانِهِ يَوْمِ الْقِيَامَةِ. And they're running towards His pleasure on the day of judgment. May Allah allow us to be a part of those سَابِقُون. Allah mentions أُولَٰئِكَ الْمُقَرَّبُونَ. They are the ones who are close to me. They are the ones who are near to me. Who doesn't want to be near Allah on the day of judgment? And when you're near Allah on the day of judgment, what does that mean? You will have the shade of what? The throne of Allah. When you're near Allah, when you're part of the sabiqun, you will be a part of those who will have the throne of Allah, who will have the shade of the throne of Allah. Now, how do we become so near to Allah? How do we get there? How do we even achieve that closeness to Him? And we talked about different types of shade that we'll have on the day of judgment. The charity, the shade of Quran, the shade of zakah, the shade of being good, the shade of protecting a Muslim brother's honor or a Muslim sister's honor. We spoke about that. But there's a category of 7 different people. And these will be shaded under the throne of Allah. Now one might ask, well, what about the shaheed? Because the shaheed is not mentioned a part of these 7. The shaheed will be hanging from a chandelier from the throne of Allah on the day of judgment. He will have a special recognition on the day of judgment. But there are 7 people, 7 categories that will be shaded under the throne of Allah. Now here's the thing. The beautiful part about these 7 categories is that every single person in here can achieve it. Every single person. It can apply. At least one of these categories can apply to you. That means one of us can be a part of these 7. This applies to us. Imagine a hadith 1400 years ago and it could apply to us today. And it will apply for the next thousands of years. And the best part about it is it'll apply in the hereafter. We have this advice, we have the key. The Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, he gave us the key of how to attain this amazing bounty. Now, the Prophet ﷺ, عن أبي هريرة عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم قال: 7 يظلهم الله في ظله يوم لا ظل إلا ظله. There will be 7 who will be shaded by Allah, by the throne of Allah, on a day where there is no shade but His shade. The first one, al-imam al-adil. That's the first one. A just ruler, a just king, a just leader. Okay? وَشَابٌ نَشَأَ بِعِبَادَةِ اللَّهِ. And a young man, youth, who grew up in the pious and worshipping of Allah. Youth who are coming to the masjid, youth who are attending halaqat, youth who are going to Muslim schools, youth who could be doing whatever, but they choose to spend their time worshipping Allah. Okay? وَرَجُلٌ قَلْبُهُ مُعَلَّقٌ فِي الْمَسَاجِدِ. And a man whose heart is attached to the masjid. And we'll dive deeper into these. A man whose heart was attached to the masjid. Sorry, technical difficulties. Okay. How many have we mentioned? 3. Okay. Fourth one. وَرَجُلَانِ تَحَابَّا فِي اللَّهِ اجْتَمَعَ عَلَيْهِ وَتَفَرَّقَا عَلَيْهِ. 2 men, or 2 brothers, or 2 sisters, who love each other for the sake of Allah. For the sake of Allah. They don't love each other because, oh, he's always helping me out, or yeah, this person's always giving me money, he's always there for me, or she says nice words to me, or she compliments. No. Purely for the sake, yeah, you're my Muslim brother, I love you for the sake of Allah. I care for you for the sake of Allah. That's what it is, right? Now, when they meet for the sake of Allah, and when they leave, they leave for the sake of Allah. Meaning, they meet up at the masjid for the sake of Allah. And when they're leaving the masjid for the sake of Allah. They're meeting, any gathering they do is for the sake of Allah. How many is that we mentioned? What is it? 4. Okay. Number 5. وَرَجُلٌ دَعَتْهُ امْرَأَةٌ ذَاتُ مُنْصِبٍ وَجَمَالٍ فَقَالَ إِنِّي أَخَافُ اللَّهِ. And a man, when a very beautiful woman comes to him and invites him to do haram with him, and he says, I fear Allah. إِنِّي أَخَافُ اللَّهِ. Meaning, this doesn't just apply to this position, but it applies to just when you're being called to do haram in private. When you're being called to do haram, you say, no, I fear Allah. It doesn't have to be a woman specifically. It could be your friends calling you to do something bad at night or whatever. Go out with them somewhere that you guys shouldn't be. Right? And you say, no, I fear Allah. Y'all go ahead, but I fear Allah. That's what? How many? 5, right? وَرَجُلٌ تَصَدَّقَ بِصَدَقَةٍ فأخافها حتى لا تعلم يمينه ما تنفق شماله. A man who gives charity to the point that his right hand, he conceals what his right hand gives. To the point that his left hand, he doesn't know what he pulled out of this right pocket, and he doesn't know what he pulled out of this left pocket. He keeps it so private, that his own body doesn't know what he's pulled out to give in charity. He's not there posting it, making YouTube videos about it, or waiting until a big CVA fundraiser happens and raises his hand, $100,000, mashallah, brother is donating. No. He's not waiting for that. But he's doing it in such privacy, that nobody knows, not even his own limbs know what he's pulled out. And sometimes, even what their own bank accounts even have in them, there's, okay, you need it? I got it, take care of it. Forget about it. He won't sit there and count it. Some people are telling me, I've been donating to a Islamic organization, right? And at the end of the year, I get the 1098, and mashallah, brother, it takes so much off my taxes, and it's such a benefit to donating, and that's all he's worried about. Yeah, I'm donating so I can get a tax benefit and a tax cut for my business. Yeah, why are you donating? For that reason. Yeah, so the IRS doesn't come, tackle me, and wrong reasons. Or we're doing it so people can see that, yeah, mashallah, look at so-and-so. Young guy, young dude, young sister, go ahead and donating for the sake of Allah, right? So a person who does something in private. Now keep in mind, the last one was, what was the one before it?
A lady someone comes and he says, I fear.
Someone who invites you to do haram in private. The second one is giving something, charity, in private. The third one, all right? وَرَجُلٌ ذَكَرَ اللَّهُ خَالِيًا فَفَاضَتْ عَيْنَاهُ. A man or a woman who remembers Allah and their tears fill up their eyes and their faces because of this, just how much fear, the awe of Allah that they have. Middle of the night, secrecy. Nobody knows about it. These are 7 that will be shaded under the throne of Allah. Now, we mentioned a just ruler, just leadership, pious youth, love of the masjid, love for one another for the sake of Allah, resisting temptation, secret charity, and crying out of the awe of Allah. Now Ibn al-Qayyim says something so beautiful about the seven who are shaded under the throne of Allah. He says, مُخَالَفَةِ الْهَوَى. They have something in common. مُخَالَفَةِ الْهَوَى. What does that mean? That means that they push away their desires. They do the opposite of what their desires tell them to do. With everything, think about it. If you're a just ruler, let's think about it. Let's go one by one. مُخَالَفَةِ الْهَوَى. If you're a just ruler, how will you be doing the opposite of what your desires do? Give me an example. Yes.
For example, if you want to raise money or raise capital, instead of taxing your people more and getting the benefit yourself, instead you lower the taxes and make it easier for the people to live. Even though you're losing money, people are living there.
Amazing. That's a great, I never thought of that perspective. That's a business perspective. That's a business-minded person, mashallah. He said, if you're a ruler, instead of taxing your people more and burdening them more with tax, rather than doing that, you will lower the tax. Right? And what was the second part? So the people can live easier. You're worried about your people. You're not worried about, we have so many rulers nowadays in this world. Money comes in. For example, the recent study that was shown for the dams that flooded and that broke out in Derna. Some few years ago in Libya, a certain amount of money, I think it was like 2.some million euros, or it might have even been bigger than that, was allocated to fix these dams, to rehabilitate these dams. Where's that money? No work was done on the dams. And look what resulted today. 11,000 people dead. And counting, and more. These rulers that are running the country, that 2.3 million went where? They didn't use it for the people. And then now for the second point. How could you say mukhalafat al-hawa for the second person who's shaded? What's the second person who's shaded on the throne of Allah? Another one. The other one, masjid. Think of masjid. The one who's attached to the masjid. Yeah? The one who's attached to the masjid, they can be doing anything else, They can go spend their time anywhere else. But what do? They choose and they're fighting their own desire. And the third one, the youth. The youth who's grew up worshiping Allah. Now you look at high schoolers and teenagers and even college students, especially if you go to a bigger school or whatever it is, so common, the homecoming parties and the football games and the parties and the after party and the after party and the pre-party and whatever it is. So you could be doing whatever, but you chose what? As a Muslim, what did you choose? You chose you fought those desires, you pushed them away, and you chose Allah. مُخَالَفَةِ الْهَوَى. You fought your desires, you pushed them away. You went opposite of what they did. And then the person who chose charity over their wealth. No, if I give $5,000, it's 5,000 short, I could invest it in something else. No. I'm going to give it towards Allah. His nafs is telling him, that's a big sum. What are you doing? No, I'm going to do it for Allah. Right? And the person who's secret worshiper at night, or the person who somebody is inviting him to do haram, a woman or a man is inviting them to do haram, and what did they choose? أَنِّي أَخَافُ اللَّهِ. Even though it's easy, especially in today's age, it's so easy to do haram. You can do whatever you want, with whomever you want, however you want. And nobody will question it. Public, private, nobody will question it. From the comfort of your own bed. And nobody will question it. And nobody might even know you even do that thing. Right? But it's so easy to do. It becomes such a natural thing. You don't think about it. Nah? You say, إِنِّي أَخَافُ اللَّهِ. All of the categories of these people all go back to fighting their desires. Now, there's two different types of obedience. One type of obedience is you're obeying, why? Strictly Allah, for the sake of Allah. And another type of obedience is the obedience between you and somebody else for the sake of Allah. You're respectful towards your Muslim brother, you're respectful towards your Muslim sister, because why? For the sake of Allah. Two different types of obedience. One is directly with Allah, one is for the people, but for Allah as well. Now, these 7 categories, I'll give whoever it is, if they answer this, $10. MashaAllah, the brothers straightened up their backs and started paying attention. MashaAllah, $10. Okay. Listen. Ahmed, you ready? Yalla, bismillah. Listen. These 7 categories are split into 2. Why are you raising your hand? Okay. I was like, I didn't even finish answering the question. These 7 categories are split into 2. Okay? The first 4 are split into something, and the the last 3 are split into something. And these 2 things are complete opposites of each other. Talk to me.
Public and private deeds.
Amazing, Hassan. $10 for you. I got you. I'm sorry, Ali. Yeah, he did too. You're not the only one who raised their hand. You see this? Now Hassan, okay, here's the second part of the question. Yes, so these 7 questions, these 7 categories, they're split into 2. Okay, and Aloki gave it away by saying they're the complete opposite of each other. These 7 categories are split into 2. The first 4 are something, and the last 3 are something. And they're the complete opposite of each other. Hassan said the first 4 are public, and the last 3 are private. Now, why do you say that?
Wait, so the first 4, leader is obviously very public.
Okay.
Second, it's like a youth that like is or like a person that's attached to the masjid. That's
Mhm.
public deed.
Now.
And then a person. Wait, what was the third one?
The third one was a young man who grew up worshiping Allah.
Wait, that's a public deed.
Mine is
No.
And then,
Yes, okay.
and then the private deeds would be like.
What's the 4th one?
Person who denies invitation to group on.
4th one. What is it?
Minus $5.
Minus $5. Ali, you should love for your Muslim brother what you love for yourself, huh, Ali? Huh? See, you want to be smart, you get a smart reaction. Ahmed, sit down, please. Okay, so these 4. The 4th one is loving your Muslim brother for the sake of Allah, or your Muslim sister for the sake of Allah, right? So, what are we saying? The first one, why are these 4 public? The first one, you're a just ruler. You're in a public position. You're a leader. You're in a public position. Number 2 is someone who is attached to the masjid. That's a public place. Na'am. Number 3, the young person who grew up, worshipping Allah. That could be also a public act. Why? Because you're going to Islamic institutes, you're doing Quran class, you're doing this, you're learning about your deen, you're around other Muslims. A public act, right? And the 4th one is loving your Muslim brother or sister for the sake of Allah. That is also something that's public. It involves people. It involves people around you. The last 3 are considered private, because when somebody invites you to do haram, most of the time you're going to do that haram what? In private. You're not going to do it in front of everybody. Okay? And the next one after that, when you're giving charity, that person who gave charity, he did it in what? In private, in secrecy. And that person in the middle of the night who's praying to Allah and worshiping to Allah, and out of fear of Allah, his tears start filling up his eyes and ears. His tears start filling up his eyes and face, right? He is in private. Oh man, you gotta chill, man. Okay. Now, here's another $10 question. There's one man, straighten up your backs. There's one man who all 7 of these apply to them in his life. One person. Who? Prophet Ibrahim, Prophet Muhammad, Sayyidina Ibrahim. Just give me, I'm not going to tell you which one is it. Ismail, Yusuf, Yaqub, who? Imran, Isa. Okay, quiet down. Only if you got it the first time. Ali, you were like 5th. You got it wrong. But you got it right. I just don't want to give you the $10. I'm just kidding. We'll get you some days, inshallah. Okay. So, Yusuf alayhi salam. No, you said it like after everybody mentioned every other prophet. That was the last one left. Allah, settle down. I didn't hear you. Sit down, settle down. Quiet down, please. Yusuf alayhi salam. The scholars say Ya Allah, quiet down. Thank you. The scholars say Yusuf alayhi salam is the only person who all 7 applied in his life. At some point, all 7. Yusuf alayhi salam is the only person. It wasn't Prophet Muhammad. Prophet Muhammad wasn't a king. He wasn't a ruler. Na'am? Right? He wasn't a ruler. And he never had somebody middle of the night try to call him to do something bad. So those don't apply to him. Na'am? No. Somebody tell him, a woman came to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam at night and told him, tell me the ayah. Quiet down. You back, You, what does that mean? What does that mean? That doesn't refer to that meaning. You bay'anika here. Should I go deep into it? لا يشركنا بالله. What? Yeah, but I'm saying, did they come to him and invite him? They're coming to him and saying, Ya Rasulullah, we're not doing this. We're not mushrikeen. We don't steal. We don't do this. But they didn't say, Ya Rasulullah, come do this with us. You get what I'm saying here? That's the difference. It's a very good thought. That's amazing. The fact that he pulled that ayah up, just out the blue, mashallah, that's amazing. Right? But you gotta understand that they're saying to him, Ilyas, amazing, that's great. But they're saying to him, they're coming to the Prophet and say, Yo, Ya Rasulullah, we promise you, we're not doing this. We promise you, we're not doing that. Ya Rasulullah, we're not mushrikeen. Ya Rasulullah, we don't steal. Ya Rasulullah, we don't do all this. But they're not saying, Ya Rasulullah, come do this with us. You see the difference? Very close, mashallah. Very close. Now, so Yusuf alayhi salam is the only person who this all applied to. And the scholars mentioned two of these traits. If you have them, you're the best. Best of character. 2 of these traits. Who can tell me what these 2 traits are? A part of the 7 categories. There's no money involved. That's it, never mind. Yes. What is it? Just ruler, okay? No, not the 5th. The question is, if you have 2 characteristics, the scholars say if you have these 2 characteristics of the 7 categories, you have one of the best characters there is. Yes? The last one is crying at night, and then the first one is? Amazing. Perfect. The best of character is the one who is a just ruler, but then also does what at night? Cries min khashyatillah. From this, just being so scared of Allah. Who is a person who had these characteristics? Aside from Yusuf. We're talking about these 2 specific, huh? He's not a prophet. He's not a prophet. Dawood is a prophet. Umar radiallahu anhu. Why is it Umar? Umar radiallahu anhu was one of the best rulers this Muslim Ummah has ever seen. He was so just to the point that we can go on about the stories of Umar and how just he was amongst the Muslims. Keep in mind, Umar, during the caliphate of Umar, the name keeping of every Muslim born birth certificates started because of Umar radiallahu anhu. Birth certificates started during the time of Umar radiallahu anhu. Allocating funds to every newborn baby was from the time of Umar. They would collect taxes, and some of those taxes would go to those newborn babies who were just born, to feed them, things like that. What today we call what? Maybe close to food stamps or something like that. That started all during the time of Umar radiallahu anhu. So he was one who had these 2 amazing categories. And Sufyan al-Thawri says, rahimahullah, says, صنفان إذا صلحت الأمة وإذا فسدت الأمة الملوك والعلماء. Meaning, he said, there's 2 characteristics, 2 types of people. If they're good, the rest of the ummah is good. But if they're bad, the rest of the ummah is bad. Al-muluk, the rulers, the kings, wal-ulama, and the scholars. If they're good, if they're straight, if they fear Allah, you're chilling. The whole ummah is going to be good. But if they're not, it's over with. And if you truly think about it, Let's start off with the ruler. Right? See how these 7 categories, Ahmed wa Abdu. What are we doing? Split up. Yalla, come on. Thank you. If you look at this, every single time, the Prophet ﷺ mentioned the 7 under the shade of Allah, the first one is always the just ruler. Always. Why is it the just ruler? Think of, when you have a just ruler, a ruler who fears Allah and cares about his people, what is he going to build? He will be building construction for masajid, for good schools, for institutions, for orphanages, things like that, to take care of the people, right? And having these widespread masajid and these widespread places for ilm. That's the first thing they'll do, because they understand that's the basis of society. And then what will that lead to? What's the next one? A pious young person who grew up worshiping Allah. Once a just ruler makes all this available for them, that it gives us the opportunity to do what? Worship Allah, be closer to Allah, be closer to our masajid. And when we're closer to the masajid, who will we meet at the masajid? The brothers who are muta'alliqeen bil masajid, the brothers who are constantly attached to the masajid. Now, you guys are meeting and these people are meeting in the masajid. What is it? You guys start to develop what? Love for the sake of Allah. You see? And now you grew up around these people and you're around good people. When somebody invites you to do haram, you remember because you grew up pious, right? You grew up pious. And that's the 5th one. And the 6th one is, now since you're staying away from doing haram, what do now? You do good. You're giving sadaqah now. And because you're giving sadaqah, you stay up in the middle of the night worshiping Allah and you have so much fear in Allah. You see how it always starts off? Why every hadith that's mentioned about the 7 under the shade of Allah, it's always starting off with the just ruler, because he builds the basis. If they're just, that's why Sufyan al-Thawri says, if the kings and the scholars are good, everybody else is going to be good. The whole ummah is going to be good. But if not, it's going to be a disaster for everybody. How are you going to have a just ruler who doesn't care about you? And that's why some of the first people on the Day of Judgment to be held accountable are kings, the leaders, and the people of ilm, the people of knowledge. They will be some of the first people who will be held accountable on the Day of Judgment. Now, we got these 7. We understand these 7, inshallah? Good? Who can repeat them to me? What's the first one? Yes, Ali. Give me one, Ali. Don't give me all 7. A just ruler. Jazakallah khair. What's number 2?
Youth who grows up in the masjid.
A youth who grows up in the masjid. Number 3. Someone who's attached to the masjid. Number 4. Someone who loves somebody else, their Muslim brother or sister, for the sake of Allah. Number 5. Yes.
Someone who resists to do temptation with money.
Someone who resists temptations and doing haram in private. Number 6. Amazing. Sadaqah in private. And number 7. What is it? Crying and fearing Allah in private. Khashyatullah. Right? Now, there's a few others I want to mention that will also have an amazing treatment on the Day of Judgment. Those who strive to meet their brother's needs. We already talked about the 7. This is separate now. Those who strive to meet their brother's needs. Whoever relieves a brother's distress in this world. Meaning, our Muslim brothers and sisters struggling in Darna, struggling in Maghrib, struggling in wherever in the world, right? You're doing something. You as a Muslim, you're doing something. You're gathering up all the clothes to send. You're gathering up donations. You're sending things. You're spreading awareness. You're doing something about it. You're relieving stress of a Muslim, right? These people, whoever makes things easy for somebody else in this dunya, Allah will make things easy for him in the world that's after it. Whoever makes things easy for a Muslim brother in this dunya, Allah will make it easy for him in the world after it. Now, those who show leniency to those who are in difficulty. The Prophet Muhammad ﷺ mentioned, right? A man who used to lend money to people. Meaning, you're a person and you give your Muslim brother money. Right? Now it's what? Dain. It's a loan. Right? And he used to say to him, if you're in don't worry about it. Take your time. I don't need it by tomorrow. I don't need it by next week. And even if they're late, you say, all right, let's chill. Take your time. We're chilling. We're good. Right? Allah will let him off on the Day of Judgment. When it comes down to that, Allah will let him off on the Day of Judgment. And then this is an important one, guys. Very important one. Muhid. Those who control their anger. Islam counts controlling anger as something very noble. It's a big deal. It's a big deal. What's the hadith of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam? He's walking into the masjid, and what does he find the Sahaba doing? Wrestling. Is wrestling haram? Is wrestling haram in the masjid? It's not haram in the masjid. Striking the face and punching somebody, it's haram. But wrestling in the masjid, would Sahaba do something wrong in the masjid? Would they do something haram in the masjid? No. He walks in. So what are you doing? You think the Prophet ﷺ doesn't know what they're doing? You think he doesn't know? He knows. But you know when you got a funny joke between you and your homeboy and another person walks in and all of a sudden it ain't funny no more? All of a sudden it just turns into serious. You guys look stupid now. Laughing at whatever you guys were doing. Right? And then somebody walks in, your teacher walks in, Shams walks in, and all of a sudden it's not funny no more. Right? This is the same exact situation. Prophet ﷺ walks in and the Sahaba are like, out of respect for him, the Prophet, even though what they're doing is not haram. So what are you doing? Say, Ya Rasulullah, we're wrestling. Why? Why are you wrestling? Why are you wrestling in the masjid? Why are you wrestling in the masjid? Ya Rasulullah, we want to see who's the rijal out of us. Who's the man out of us? Who got it? Who's the strength? Who lifts more? Right? Well, that's what it's about, Ya Rasulullah. That's why we're wrestling. He says, no. The man out of you is the one who can control this during times of anger. The tongue. That's a man. That's a man. That's the man that's the real man who can control this. It's not about how big you are and all this stuff. And the lecture of Muhammad Hoblo's, he says brothers nowadays taking steroids. And they come into the masjid 6 weeks later, they were skinny and then now they're big and now he got muscles on his nose and his ears. You tell him, brother, what are you doing? He said, wallahi, brother, I've been eating chicken and rice and tuna, I said, well, I've been doing the same thing. I don't got muscles on my nose and ears, right? But he's serious. A lot of us, yes, we should go to the gym to look good, to feel good and all that good stuff, to be healthy. But we put that as a priority. But that's not who the Rijal is. That's not who a man is. But who can control their tongue, right? And this is advice for myself before I give it out to anybody. I promise you this. I have to apply this in my life and continue to apply it before I give it out to anybody. Because it's such a serious thing. And we already talked about the things that the tongue will get you in. The problems, the issues, the adhab the tongue will get you in on the Day of Judgment. And may Allah protect us. Now, the virtue of those, the mu'addin on the Day of Judgment, right? The one who used to make adhan in front of everybody on the Day of Judgment, they will have the longest of necks on the Day of Judgment. They will be able to see above everybody. Where everybody's crowded and claustrophobic, no, they will be able to see above everybody. The longest of necks. And every single creature and being who heard that adhan will testify for them on the Day of Judgment. Even if it was an ant. Every single person who heard that adhan will testify for that person on the Day of Judgment. Right? And these are some of the bounties of those people who are making adhan, and those who control their anger, and those who are lenient with their Muslim brothers, and those who love their Muslim brothers and sisters, and those who strive to meet their brothers' needs. Inshallah. I think here is a good stopping point, so we can catch Isha bi'idhnillah. And we can open it up to questions. And one last thing I want to mention. Please, if you're coming to these lectures for any other reason but learning knowledge and pleasing Allah with that knowledge, you need to check yourself. If you're coming to these lectures for any other reason but pleasing Allah and attaining knowledge, check yourself. There's a big problem that we're facing between our brothers and sisters here in this masjid that are coming. Really understand and sit down and reflect, why are you coming? And to those who sit and talk bad about people, especially after we had the lecture last week, especially after we had a cemetery visit and people are speaking bad about others while they're at the cemetery and after, check yourself. Even if that person who said it is stupid, even if that person who said it is no good, even if that person who said it is terrible, check yourself and watch what you're talking about and what you're saying. And realize and understand, why am I coming to these Muslim events with my other Muslims? Is it because my friends are coming? Is it because I get to see other people? For the brothers, am I here for the opposite gender? Why am I here? What is the reason I'm coming to the masjid to learn and attain knowledge? What is the reason for me sitting in the front rows? Whether you're on this side or that side, check yourself. Please, saffi your niyyah, make this clean. Get your intention right. And last thing, a few announcements we want to mention is that this Saturday, it's on the Mass Story. This Saturday, there will be a fundraiser, more of a dinner provided for those, and it's free to attend, for those victims that were in Libya and Morocco. It's held by Islamic Relief, and it's going to be happening at DU, inshallah. The flyer is on the Mass page, okay, on the Mass Story, not the page. So if you'd like to attend, they're trying to donate. Islamic Relief has already sent a big package to Libya as relief, and they're doing the same thing again for Morocco. I encourage all of us to be there. It's free to attend. There's going to be dinner, inshallah. You don't have to pay for the dinner. Just whatever you can give and help out. Monetary, whatever you can give and help out to Islamic Relief. They're one of the most trusted organizations there is out there, inshallah. So please attend to that. And then on the 30th, there's going to be a new series starting at Masjid al-Rahmah. And this series will be about purification of the soul and just finding your soul and how you can get your soul nice and clean, so the actions we do reflect that, right? Al-Imanu ma waqara fil qalb wa sadaqahu al-a'mal. The Iman is what's inside the heart, and your actions is what testify and prove it. So that on Saturday, it'll be the 30th, it'll be every other week. And it'll only be for an hour, inshallah, at Masjid al-Rahmah. I'll be giving the lecture, so we hope to see you guys all there. And we want to get Masjid al-Rahmah more involved and get more people around Masjid al-Rahmah بإذن بارك الله لنا ولكم في القرآن العظيم ونفعني وإياكم بالآيات والذكر الحكيم استغفر الله لي ولكم ولسائر المسلمين فاستغفروه إنه هو الغفور الرحيم. We got 3 minutes for questions. Any questions? Okay. Let's make adhan inshallah, and we'll get to praying بإذن الله.